Hello, listeners. Welcome to episode 4 of In the Wider Interest, the Fair Game podcast. My name is Kevin Borras. I'm your host for the next 45 minutes or so. If you are wondering why the Fair Game podcast is not called the Fair Game podcast, someone's beaten us to it. And the Fair Game podcast is the Scientology podcast. And each to their own, but we don't really want to get involved with Scientology. But maybe we could do a joint podcast where we talk about football, non-league football in this case, and Scientology. It's unlikely. Anyway, so today's episode, we are talking to the CEOs of 3 Kent-based non-league clubs. That's the link. That's why we've got these 3 guys with us. So all of you, thank you very much for your time. And I'll introduce you all in, let's do alphabetical order. So first of all, we have Oliver Ash. Oliver is the CEO of Maidstone United. Oliver, thank you for your time.
You're very welcome.
Thank you much indeed. We also have Damian Irvine, who is the CEO of Ebbsfleet United.
Morning, Kevin. Hello, everyone.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have David Netherstreet, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Tonbridge Angels. Welcome all. Hi, David.
Yeah, welcome. I'm actually the chairman of Tonbridge.
Chairman, I apologise.
Yeah, we don't have a CEO yet.
Okay, Chairman, I should have
Well,
done my research. As you can see, I've done.
If we're going to be pedantic, I'm also not the CEO. That's Bill Williams. I'm the joint owner. So just to be pedantic.
No. I think pedanticism is one of my favourite things. I'm an absolute pedant, to be honest. I've fallen out with people on my pedanticism. So please, I apologise for getting that wrong.
So should we start again then? Or is that
I think we should start now. I'm more than happy to get stuff wrong. I'm open. I'm open to things. I've talked about, things I've got wrong in the past. 2 marriages down. I'm happy to discuss how I've got.
we can discuss sustainable marriages then. I've got a few things to say on that too.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that. We'll do that as a maybe sort of bonus content. We'll discuss that as well. But anyway, so you are all in senior positions at Kent-based non-league clubs. You are all this season in National League South. Now, what I was going to discuss to introduce things was to discuss Saturday's results. So this will kind of date when we recorded this, but Maidstone United started this season with a 4-2 win against Hemel Hempstead Town. So a good Saturday for you, Ollie. Excellent stuff. Now, then I thought, okay, we'll discuss the other Ebbsfleet and Tonbridge's results. And of course, you played each other. Not the greatest Saturday to start the season for Tonbridge. A 5-1 win for Ebbsfleet United, and it was 4-0 after 32 minutes, I believe. So, are you two okay, David and Oliver and Damian? You okay? There's no bad blood. There's no issues here.
No, we're good. We're very good. As I just said to David earlier, it's very early days. It's akin to opening the door in the morning. You don't know what the day is like yet in the first round. So it was, we were a bit sharp in the first half, and we were very pleased with it. But as I say, the job is a long road ahead for everyone. So I wouldn't take much into that.
But I do like that. I do like the idea of this first day of the season being like opening the door to the rest of the day. I like that.
That's different. That's different to the way they look at things in golf championships. They always say that if you have a bad first round, it means basically you can't win. Whereas if you have a good first round, it doesn't mean you're going to win. The others can catch up. So maybe there's a bit of an echo, or maybe it's different.
No, I like that. I think it's nice. We talk about other sports. We talked about Scientology. We talked about golf. So I think this is a great start. And marriage. This is a great start to the episode. So listeners, don't leave. We are going to discuss not Kent non-league football in a minute. Anyway, so that was a great start. So yeah, good start to the season for Ebbsfleet. A 5-1 win. As an AFC Wimbledon fan, I'm always keen to follow Ebbsfleet United. There are copious amounts of former AFC Wimbledon players. There's 3 started on Saturday. Was it Alfie Egan, Craig Tanner, and Dominic Pollard?
On Pollard, yeah, that's right.
Excellent. Well, anyway, and then Tonbridge has great links with my club as well.
Yeah,
with Ben Judge and Lewis Taylor, and of course one of our favourite sons, John Main, former Tonbridge Angels record scorer, and he was at our game on Tuesday. So I'm very happy that there's some nice links. Anyway, right, welcome all. Let's discuss then Fair Game. This is the Fair Game podcast. you're all members of Fair Game. I'll just start with David. Why did Tonbridge Angels sign up quite early on? It's a Fair Game. What can Fair Game do for your club in particular, and what do you think it can do for non-league football and Kent-based non-league football in particular?
I think the thing about Fair Game is that I don't think there's any point in trying to level up the teams, because that won't happen. There are so many different sides, so many different combinations of how teams are run and organised. But what I think we do need is a uniformity in the organisation of the leagues, so we know where we are. We had a bit of a torrid time in the National League. There were so many contradicting stories going around that it became very difficult. We're running businesses, and unless you have a control of how we're supposed to be running our businesses to meet with their requirements, it's very difficult to organise yourselves. The beginning of this year, when we were asked to play without any income at all, I mean, that's ridiculous. You can't do that. So hopefully getting a uniformity, and it's got to start with the FA, it's got to start with them trickling everything down from the FA. They've got to learn how to organise their leagues below them. And so there is this consistency.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you. Oliver, obviously your Maidstone United signed up to Fair Game early on. Again, ask the same question. What can Fair Game do for Maidstone United?
Well, it was a no-brainer, really, because Fair Game were organising themselves and helping to put together a group of like-minded people, lobbying for something which I've believed in for many years, ever since I got involved in sort of professional sport, and not just football, but in the French rugby club as well, from a non-sport background. And when you're in business outside sport, things like good governance and sustainability are just givens. So when you go into then the world of football, for example, and find how the governance is all over the place, and there are 3 different leagues and 3 different sets of clubs managing the sort of professional game with no coordination except by a lily-livered FA, and you find all sorts of conflicts of interest going on. You find clubs going bust left, right, and centre, laughable characters taking over clubs, all sorts of nonsense. And as Dave said, the governance at our level, has been so appalling over the last 18 months that it's, we running businesses governed by a body that is unfit for purpose. So all of that, to have a group set up by you guys, which is arguing in a much more structured way the same things, was manna from heaven for us.
Excellent. Great. Damian?
I'd certainly echo a lot of what Oliver said. The timing of Fair Game's creation was extremely timely for us at our level, given the current events and affairs that were going on in the game prior to Christmas and into this new year. In a wider picture, I think Fair Game for us it's very important, and we wanted to be involved because real genuine governance change, and certainly fiscal change around the game in terms of rebalancing how clubs spend and how clubs compete. It has to be game-wide, and certainly league-wide at the very least, because as is littered over the time, and we're very driven and pushed by supporters' aspirations and ambition, and we're pushed by the wage structures in games from the playing side and agent side, and we're also pushed by ownerships and the reality of what can and can't be spent. So all of those things are, put this pressure where the club is the one in the middle that is trying to sort of affect responsible or sustainable management. But it only takes one in the league to not require to do that and to come in and overspend. Then all of those pressures start tightening. The fans saying, why aren't we there? Why can't we do that? You're not aspirational. That then affects your bottom line if season tickets dwindle away, etc. So for us, it was very much a no-brainer for as Oliver said, for fair game, because I guess in my history, I've probably gone into clubs that require that transformation to get away from a financial issue or from overspending, and those pressures are always omnipresent. So, by having everybody in the game trying to affect this change, and now that it's gone up to a government level, it was really telling, and I think very, very positive for everybody. With hope, we've got a lot of hope for it. So.
Excellent. So what was the National League South level? We use that phrase. The season was curtailed in mid-February. So what was the main sort of financial impact from having no income from then? Well, from before then, but the season ends in February. How does that affect you? I mean,
from our point of view, and I know Oliver and David will speak as well to it. From our point of view, the big challenge at the time wasn't so much that the season stopped as it did. It was that it was stopped with an expectation of funding coming through from prior to Christmas. And the game was, and clubs continued to trade, continued to play on the basis that a pretty firm promise was in place that this was how your funding was going to come in. That changed overnight, pretty much. I think it's fair to say, gents. In late January, I think it was, or mid-January, there was a little bit of silence around when the funding was going to be coming in, which concerned people. And then in a couple of weeks, it was said, look, there is funding available, but it's going to be in the format of loans other than the grants that were promised. And that moving of the goalpost, so to speak, caused a catastrophic sort of fallout, I think it's fair to say, among clubs and their own financial models. It was under a time of severe duress. It was a time when clubs were working out ways to look after their people week on week, let alone month on month, and to have that fundamental change to what the promise was in how to complete the season, because everybody wants to complete the season. That's what we all started to do. But that really threw a massive spanner in the works, and it unravelled from there. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. Sure. So, Oliver, can I ask you a specific Maidstone United question? How much of your club's revenue comes from match day revenue in terms of obviously ticket sales, programs, beer, food, usual kind of stuff on a Saturday? How much of your income comes from that, and how much of it comes from other sources? I know, but I have contacts at Sutton United. A lot of their money comes from other clubs using their plastic pitch during the weekend and on Sundays. And how much? Yeah. So how did that impact you when all of that stopped in one go at once?
Yeah, well, it had stopped. It had stopped before that, to be honest, because since when COVID first struck, it started to basically put a brake on all those activities. So, all of those things stopped. But the government, the way it reacted to the situation, was basically to decide to print money and was throwing money at people either directly or through local authorities. So we got support from the local authorities. We got some grants, so we weren't in a desperate financial situation, but we're using resources that would otherwise be used for other things. So, the fact that the pitch, we couldn't hire the pitch, it's a significant part of the revenue stream that we have. I mean, I would say it's essential, really, but a lot of the benefits that come from it are not directly from pitch hire, which probably contributes 150 grand a year. But the indirect benefits from having people come into the club all the time, and that means that they come and become members of the club. They come and buy merchandise. They come and drink in the bar. They come to matches. So it's an indirect effect. So we were hit badly by the season stopping, but overall, thanks to all the support that was around, we certainly survived. And as Damian said, where we still have a very bitter taste in the mouth is the way the whole process of funding, whether it was the beginning in October last year when the National League Board decided how to distribute the funding, which was very, very flawed, to say the least, or going to what Damian was describing when the funding just dried up. Was I surprised in the January, February dry up of funding? No, because we'd seen very closely over the last few months how unfortunately incompetent the management structure of the league was, and it was really just one disaster after another. So the fact that they screwed up on the arrangement with the DCMS, and the fact that there were no minutes to say who'd said what, and then that they just dropped all the clubs in it.
Wow.
It really was. It would have been comic were it not tragic.
Sure, I didn't know that was that. It was that. I'm going to use the word poor. So, David, obviously, when the pandemic hit in March 2020, that was when football stopped, and we didn't know what was going to go on. As a football fan, you're sitting there in sort of April 2020, thinking, "Are we ever going to go back? Is this ever going to stop?" When people are saying, "Oh, there'll never be a vaccine. This is it. We're stuck forever." And you think, "Well, I'm reasonably intelligent. I'm quite sensible. But is that ever going to happen? Is that true? Oh, is this the end of our lives?" And then you start to think, "Okay, maybe not." Premiership comes back in June. Project Restart in June 2020. But for non-league football, that must have been a really difficult situation to deal with. Thinking, well, is that it? Is that it? Obviously, it wasn't. And you started playing again in September 2020. That your season started again.
October.
And it doesn't last. And it's by February this year, it's gone again. The fact that we are where we are now, obviously, it's not a political program. Vaccines. The people that invented the vaccines and created the vaccines, they've kind of given us our lives back. But how did it affect you as a person, being the chairman of a non-league club that had no income and no prospect of income potentially?
Well, I echo what Oliver has said. We took full advantage of the grants and that were available via the football bodies and also by the government. The council has been very good to us. We just, because we're a smaller club, we relied on our income from events to help fund the club. But of course they stopped as soon as COVID hit. So technically we've had no real income at all until the COVID rules were relaxed. We took the stance that we didn't have sponsors, we didn't sell season tickets. When they told us the league was starting in October, we cut everything to a minimum. None of the players, so some did say they were out contracts, but we had the funny feeling that we were going to stop again because of the way things were going. It has been difficult, but each time we plan to start for the new season. We prepare our budgets. You can't just throw the towel in. We're an entertainment industry. As Damian said, fans have expectations. Ours perhaps aren't as high as some of the others with their expectations, but we will provide entertainment for the people in Tonbridge, and we'll provide community facilities when we can. So that keeps us going, and also talking to the council, that kept us going as well, to know we were safe in the ground, which is council owned.
Right. Yes, that's a good point also to make. So, in terms of expectation, Damian, what was the expectation of Ebbsfleet United fans last season? Because you look at, obviously, you're all playing in National League South now, but you look at expectation, you look at, well, what can we do to keep going? How do we keep the fans on board? But then I'm not criticising Dover Athletic whatsoever. Another Kent-based non-league team, Dover in the National League, say we can't play. We are not playing. We can't afford to play. This is not sustainable for us. How did you all three react to Dover's position? Understanding, I presume, but I'm not said no one's criticising Dover here at all, but how did that affect you, the way that they dealt with it?
Pretty you might be asking the wrong club, because for a number of reasons, it was quite sensitive and very close to home for us, that issue. Ebbsfleet was relegated at the end of the 1920 season on points per game when the season had to cease in March. And that was a 0.002 points percentage that we were relegated and Maidenhead stayed up above us. We'd fought our way out of the relegation zone when the season had ceased, but the way that was applied, and there was a lot of meetings and a lot of to and fro in over that summertime to arrive at that. And it was a pretty late decision that we were going down into the south. That causes its own problems because you really don't know what you're budgeting for and trying to do next year when you don't know what division you're in. And we talk about supporters' expectations. We could have said we're going to recruit for a National League South season. But then if we stay in the National League and we're beaten every week, people might understand up front why that happened due to the circumstances, but it won't last. After a week, your fans are going to be tearing down and demanding the manager's head and saying, it's not good enough. So we had to take an approach where we had to plan for a bit of both seasons. But still, the expectation was we were a relegated club by points per game into the South, and they expect you to be strong. Whether or not supporters demand promotion, I don't think they really come out and say we must be promoted, but I think deep down they want every week a competitive team where you're up in the playoffs and fighting. Now that's been a bit of a rod for the back that the club has made for itself, and I'm very pragmatic and open about that. I think that's what the whole fair game thing is about. People sometimes roll their eyes and say, oh, well, Ebbsfleet, why would you be involved? Or if Wrexham were to sign up, why would you? Or Filed, because we're seen as being clubs that have overspent in the past. And it's true. And that's why we're at the table. I've been at the club for 18 months and I can get it. And I think when you've got clubs that have been proponents of that in the past, I think they're good examples as to why it doesn't work necessarily. A club is built so much more on throwing a wage budget at it. It really is. And the history is littered with clubs who have spent a lot of money in buying players, whether it be Billericay or others, and I don't mean to pick on them, but they had their era. And this club certainly had an era of spend where it didn't achieve what it wanted ultimately, which was EFL promotion. So that's a failed investment. My question is always, if we'd have spent half of that or 75% of that or 25% of that, would the football fortune have been vastly different? And I would have to say, with good sound recruitment, a sustainable model, not hiring and firing managers, etc., I think your chances are pretty much still in the ballpark. I don't think fundamentally you change your positions. I generalise, but is an extra 20% in spend really going to get you over the line in those big games? Probably not, if you're still not doing all the other things right. So that's where we're at. Fans' expectations, I think, are high, but because they've been moulded over the last 7 years to be high, they've had a great ride. And the club has spent a lot of money. That's been wholly and solely funded by an ownership. So is it sustainable? Yes, as long as that ownership can afford that and keep doing it. And sustainability is all about risk. Now, for me, when any model is based on the whims of one particular person or the ability of one particular person or group to fund, or life's jeopardy, financial crises or particular industries might fall over, or health, or marital circumstances, or anything can contribute to when you have one funding source altering that funding source. So to me, that's not sustainable, because there are way too many variables outside of your control as a football club that can affect your future tomorrow if that's stopped, when you're overspending and relying on directors' loans purely to fund. So, and that's always been my mantra. Now, our ownership talked of sustainability long before I arrived, but it needs to happen practically day to day, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's unrealistic to expect to be able to change an overspending football club in one season, because as soon as you do that, your supporters will be very disillusioned. If you halve your budget, it just goes south really quickly. You're seen as having no ambition. So it has to be a balance. Our accounts came out for the last reportable season, and we had a large loss still of well over sort of 1.6 million, I think it was off the top of my head. But that has come down from well over 2 million up towards 3 million 3 years ago. It's a direction the club needs to keep going on. And it takes, I think it's a 3 to 5 year plan when at that level, obviously it's all in context and it's all in perspective. So if the losses weren't that large 3 years ago, it wouldn't take so long to rectify that and turn it around. It's all in context. But generally speaking, that's the plan. And our supporters are good with it, but they're good with it so long as you're still competitive on that pitch, really. And that's the conundrum I think we all face. It's very difficult to have a holding year, particularly when relegation and promotion is a fundamental in the pyramid. You can't afford, if you're in the States or in some countries or sports that don't have a trapdoor to fall through, you can mothball for a year or two and really have clean up years, tidy years, and then come back and choose a year in the future where you've harvested and you're ready to spend and do it right. But it has to be a balance. It has to be a slow turnaround at what we do at football clubs to please all of those stakeholders and pressures I talked of.
Yeah, sure. Excellent. Thank you for that. So, Dave, what is a sustainable season for your team then?
I don't think we've had a sustainable season, quite honestly. Okay, the books balance. They're looking fairly good, but we've had to survive on directors' loans. We've had to survive on donations. You never actually bring enough income in to cover your outgoings. There's always something. So yeah, Damian's quite right. It's a gradual process. We became a community club by choice. We couldn't find an owner, to be honest.
Right.
So it became a community club. We joined the system. We've survived. It's been difficult. It's been, in fact, some seasons it's been a nightmare. You've had challenges, but the owners, of which we've got just over 300, are very supportive of the board and appreciate what we have to go through, because you have to be open. Provided you're open, that's fine. Yeah, Damian is so right in saying that it's a gradual process, and I think we're getting there. We haven't had any loans put in last year,
right,
for obvious reasons. So it's we think we're doing that. We've had a change in the board now. We've got new blood in, people with experience, which we haven't had before. We've had very well-meaning owners who we've done our best, but now we have to take the next step forward to become commercially, to form a proper commercial operation, which is what we're doing.
Sure. Okay, Oliver, what's the situation with Maidstone?
Yeah, well, you probably have to go back to look at the sort of two key episodes in the sort of recent life of the club, which showed the dangers of not being sustainable. The club went bust in 1992. And the reason was a relatively sort of classic football story of too much money going into the team and not into infrastructure, so that the team finds itself ready for promotion, but the stadium isn't. And then the club finds it can't do what's necessary to fund stadium improvements. And that led one way or another to the club going under. And then the club was reformed and fought its way back up to the heady heights of the Isthmian League. And in 2010, nearly was within, a couple of days of going under again for similar reasons. The team had been funded to get up to Ryman, but there was no ground, there was no stadium, so it was renting grounds elsewhere. The fans were limited because of that. There was a hard core of 200 or 300, but that the club as a whole wasn't going anywhere without its own stadium. It's such a key thing at every level, is to have a ground you can call your own and to be able to make money out of it and provide a home for fans. So when Terry Casey and I sort of effectively took over the club in 2010, we said we have to make sure that we can have a stadium in town and we can make the club sustainable. We didn't want to be, we couldn't for financial reasons anyway, but we didn't want to be owners that would throw money at sort of supporting a team that wasn't producing, or a club that wasn't producing the money in a sustainable way. The fans that we've just talked about, who are the sort of lifeblood of all of our clubs, they were so sort of punch drunk by then because of what had happened that they would have accepted almost anything. And so one of the key things that we did then, which was controversial at the time, was to say we can only do this if we put an artificial pitch down. And it was controversial because there's a lot of prejudice and emotion about artificial pitches that lingers from the days of rock hard green plastic. But 9 years on from that episode, all of our fans, like fans in most other clubs that have gone down the same road, have accepted that 3G pitches are actually great, and they're great for their club, and the club prospers, therefore they prosper. And it really is as simple as that. So that, I think you have to sort of look back at what we've suffered as a club, which is why I've never sort of brag about the fact that we're sustainable now, is because we've gone through tough times in the past. We've seen for ourselves what happens when you do borrow too much money, when you find money from sources that are not sustainable, and you end up either having to pay it back, not being able to, or just simply not being able to live at the level you've been used to, and then the spiral of negativity sets in. So I would say that probably the 3G pitch is the key to that. And at our level, many clubs, if they don't already, should certainly look at that model, because it is so beneficial in every way. And now, with the benefit, we've been the guinea pigs, but with the benefit of hindsight, fans do accept it. Tracy Crouch accepts that it's going to be in League Two before very long now. And it is the way forward at our level. So I'd be keen actually to hear from Dave and Damian their thoughts on that, and why they aren't doing what they can to get that sort of pitch laid down. I've spoken to Dave's colleague a year or two ago, I think, about that. Keen to know more about that particular thing.
Okay, go for it, guys. I'll butt out of that question, and Oliver, you've asked it. Go for it.
Yeah, that is something we are actively looking at now. We've done we're just having the surveys done, topography surveys of the ground. It is the way forward. We had severe problems with our grass pitch a couple of seasons back, where it just flooded and we couldn't play any games, and we were busy hunting around. The league were telling us that we had to play our home games away from home, so we were one match away from having to do that. Yeah, no, it is the way forward. We have Phil has spoken to Oliver, and we've spoken to the council, and as a community club, as it can be used for all purposes. So yes, that is something we are actively seeking. Now, whether it be next season, the season after, it depends. We're just getting the financing together, and so yeah, it is the way forward for us. And I cannot see why the pitches are not accepted in the league. It's ridiculous. They play internationals on them. They had a whole World Cup over in Canada on them.
One of the few downsides, David, is the fact that the pitch it almost favours the better teams. I remember when we first put it in, and we played Ebbsfleet. I can't remember, it must be 6 or 7 years ago, and they played us off the park, and we thought, my God, what have we done? This is a big mistake. Because at the time they had a fantastic team, and we really did think we might need to change the way we approach the playing of the game with this surface, because you can't just lump it forward and slide in, and so yeah, that does change.
Yeah, well, we've got a groundsman who's got OCD, and he wants his pitch to be Wembley every single game. As you might have seen when we played Bradford, they absolutely slaughtered us on a beautiful pitch. We wish we'd had a mud bath.
Yeah,
I think for us, the problem, the reason you ask why we haven't done it to date, I think it's been because it's just been that pressure and that fundamental waste in your head that you're trying to achieve promotion into the league within 3 years, 4 years, or whatever that might be, and you're trying, and this is getting back to my business head and my frugal head, and thinking, well, we're going to spend best part of £1 million on something which, if we achieve what we're saying we're planning on achieving in the next 3 years, gets ripped up, and then spend another £500,000 on relaying a grass pitch. So for us, I think, as you say, Oliver, the minute it's mandated that League Two is okay for it, I think will change a number of clubs. views on that, because we've already said we're trying to save money and not be wasteful and be prudent. There's that underlying thing of just like, well, if you're saying you want to be up there, but that necessitates ripping up £1 million worth of brand new pitch at some stage, that doesn't really reconcile for just, you get sleepless nights about that. But getting onto your point about when you talked about the change and where things are at, Oliver, and you mentioned it as well, Kevin, it's all about mandate for change. And why we asked at the start why fair game now and why it's happening is because all these pressures we've got about trying to be sustainable, all the meetings we've got to have with our supporters explaining why we need to do things and talking them around, and why we have to tell managers that your budget's coming down, and why we have to tell players that wages won't be rising, and all of this. There's no better time than a time that we've had in terms of a mandate. And you've got a really good excuse, for want of a better word, a really good mandate to hang your hat on and say there's no bigger crisis in our game financially as has been in the last 18 months. So we must change because of that. If things were all just smooth in the greater world and we hadn't had COVID and we hadn't had what we've had, then that convincing to do it just for financial reasons is a bit harder to do for your fan base. But that's why with fair game being able to grab everyone together and use the current world circumstance to make the change, which has been coming for years. It's been trickling, some half efforts are made and some salary cap discussions or whatever are made, and then they fall away or they get beaten in court or whatever that might be. But now you've got this hammer to beat the problem with, I think, and to say it's forced upon us because of the world situation. Now's the best time to make a better game and a better picture. And I know there's been talk, Tracy Crouch and other politicians and commentators have mentioned that now's a time to rewrite the canvas for football. It's the best opportunity. My concern is that we're 18 months deep in this, and already in this summer window, already as the game seems to be, the seeds are sprouting again, and everyone's starting to forget where we were 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and how desperate the outlook was. People's memories are so short in that regard, and we haven't really got tangible change as yet mandated and in law to do it. And that concerns me a little bit. The saying, strike while the iron's hot, has never been truer, in my opinion.
Fair point. I mean, you look at the last two seasons, one of the promoted clubs from the National League has had a synthetic surface and has had to dig it up. Obviously, with Harrogate ended up playing, was it 4 or 5 home games at Doncaster, and then because they went up so late in the process, because they went up in the playoffs, which were delayed.
Sutton as well, is it not?
And Sutton as well. Sutton, I mean, at least with Sutton, they knew in May that they were promoted. Obviously, Harrogate had that 6 weeks. But again, they've had the same thing. Sutton have had a couple of home games postponed because it was their new grass pitch isn't ready. But I know Sutton made a lot of their revenue came from renting that pitch out, not just to football, to schools. I know other clubs. I know Sutton Common Rose, who play in the Eastman League, they play in that pitch. A lot of youngsters, sort of youth teams, play across it, and that's a lot of their revenue is gone. Harrogate the same. I know Harrogate had the same issue. Is it time for the Football League to think, well, hang on a second, if we want non-league clubs to do well and to get promoted and to come into the league and thrive, that it's time to make that change? It's as good as grass. It's better than grass. It's not because of the bounce. Sutton's pitch didn't used to be that great, but the later one was a fantastic bit of a synthetic surface. Harrogate's synthetic surface was fantastic. I know Maidstone's is very, very good. So it's time for them to think, well, what is sustainable then? What does that mean?
Well, it may be time for them, but again, the EFL is run by member clubs. The League Two clubs, they don't want to be threatened by a load of sort of plastic pitch clubs in the National League. They want their own closed shop. They want to stay up. They don't want to go down. So it's in their interest to make life difficult for the National League clubs who are playing on 3G. And we got very close to a vote accepting it. I think about 6 years ago. It was tied. It was a draw, and I think there was a casting vote or something. Anyway, it didn't get through. And since then, the clubs have sort of all gone against it, and it's one of the reasons why One of the many reasons why I think that the idea of a football regulator is so needed now, because each club in each managing board in each league has its own agenda, and it's not in the interests of football as a whole to make decisions like that. Whereas football as a whole, if it wants clubs to be sustainable, if it really does want to protect fans from clubs that could be threatened, should be saying, as Tracy is saying quite clearly in her interim report, League Two, you should accept 3G pitches. And whether they're accepted above that or not, personally, I don't care, because the funding is so substantial when you get up to League One that the idea of replacing your pitch is no longer something which will leave the Sutton directors tearing their hair out. It's something in the normal course of business. And also, the richer you are as a club, the more you can aspire to an absolutely pristine natural grass surface. And I believe that's better at the moment. I prefer to play football on the best possible grass surface than a plastic one. But when you get down to National League or League Two, the average grass pitch is pretty ropey. You can argue that it might not be the same thing. That's it. It certainly is one of the arguments why the Tracy Crouch momentum is the time for us now all to make sure we get across the line and things happen. Because as Damian was saying, if we do slip back into the complacency of football going back a few years, nothing will ever change. And there are so many people who would be keen to shut the door on change in established positions that will happen very easily. It takes a lot of people like Fair Game and good people like Tracy to push these changes across the line. We have a sort of once in a lifetime opportunity now to do that.
It's a great point, Oliver. And the conundrum is what you mentioned there, Kevin, about the clubs that have come up. There's almost an argument there to say that, and I think there are other clubs in the playoffs that were looking to go deep that were also on artificial pitches in the National League. And they were having to look out for plans that if they managed to get through to the back end of the playoffs and find very late that they got up, what they were going to do for the first 8-10 weeks of their season. But there's an argument almost, as you say, in the stats to say that the clubs more positioned financially to get up are the ones that are using artificial pitches because of that community revenue and things that they're achieving. And Harrogate certainly did that. But then once they get up there, and you're talking a difference in central funding from what, Oliver, 80,000, up to $750,000 plus once you jump up into League Two. It's a massive, massive difference. Yep. So it's all well and good to need that artificial pitch to get your way up into the league. But then do you really need to go back to artificial if you could up there? Because they're just going to say, well, to be fair, we could stay on a grass pitch. We've got this massive central funding now. So what's the point of going back to artificial? I'm saying that they shouldn't, but you almost, when it's a financial driver. It's a very naive argument, isn't it? It's a very naive argument because all the clubs have got the same financial kicker. So if you have got a situation where you've got lower revenue coming in because for all the reasons that can happen, the 3G pitch will add. It could add another $1 million to your revenue. I mean, we estimate that it's probably worth in excess of $500,000 to revenues at our club, and at our level, that's a lot of money. So even in League Two, if you can think, well, we could add maybe $500,000 or $750,000 to our revenues by having a pitch like that. That's a massive amount of money. So all right, Harrogate and Sutton are two very different animals. In case it's not clear, I mean, Harrogate have been funded by a very wealthy owner since they started their rise up the leagues, and Sutton is more of a community club. So they're very different models. So I think Harrogate, the pain for Harrogate of going up and continuing to be a sort of subsidy model is less of a pain than Sutton will find a massive pain, because the costs of replacing the pitch will probably take out the increased revenue they get from League Two. So they might say, well, we can afford it because we had that extra revenue from League Two, but they suddenly find themselves in a position where they start the season minus 750,000, where everybody else is on a bigger budget. So they're at a real disadvantage from the word go. So, I don't disagree with you, mate. I'm just saying that drawbridge approach and mentality, when a club does get up into the promised land, they tend to sort of start to think, well, do we really need to vote for artificials again? Because they feel protected, they feel like they're in there. And obviously it's very easy to go back down and have to rip things up. It's a really interesting argument, but I'll say that the main reason we haven't agitated for it is because, one, we've had a lot of other priorities as well in the last 18 months to get in place and get right. But mainly, as I say, that potential that if we get what we want, we're going to be asked to rip up a pretty major investment, and we don't like to burn money like that or grant money or anything. I don't think that's the right way for football foundation funding and all that to be used on something which is so short term. So they've got to fix it where it can, if we can keep one up into League Two, League One, whatever, that would make a very different consideration. Very.
Yeah, and again, you're looking at as a supporting a League One club, you're talking about £750,000 revenue from your synthetic surface. You're saying that's a lot of money in non-league. That's a lot of money in League One. There are some clubs, okay, Sunderland, Ipswich, Charlton, Portsmouth, they're on that other end of the scale. But you're looking at my team and you're looking at Morecambe and Accrington, that's a massive amount of money. I mean, looking at if we sold a player for money, £500,000, that's decent. That's all right. That's a lot of money for us. And but there are other clubs in our division where that is, it's small change, where we know that there are players playing in the other end of League One who are earning £15,000-20,000 a week. That's, to us, that's hilarious. Never going to happen for us. But you're looking at sustainability. Again, it's difficult to talk about other clubs when they're not here. But Paul Mullin last year, Cambridge United in League Two, was the top scorer, the highest scorer in the EFL, right? Had a fantastic, I think he scored 34 in 46, well, he didn't play 46. He scored 34 and 42. So when Joe Pickett leaves our club, we're looking at, Paul Mullin would be great for us. Would he want to come to us? I know he's from the north. He's been playing in Cambridge. Maybe he'll end up going League One, staying in Cambridge, maybe, or going, Charlton were interested. There were other clubs interested in him in the northwest. And then we just are all shocked that he joins Wrexham. Now, I had forgotten that Wrexham are owned by a Hollywood star and another actor, Ryan Reynolds, and the other guy whose name I never remember. So when you're looking at that as a club, again, no ire towards Paul Mullin whatsoever. He wants to earn as much money as he can from his short career. Good on him, well done, sir. But we're looking at sustainability again, where people like you, Oliver, owners of Maidstone United, you're looking at sustainability as an issue. Ryan Reynolds owns Wrexham. That's where the money's come from. Good, well done to them. Doesn't take much for those people to think, I've had enough of this, and then sell it on. How easy is it, or how difficult is it to look at those kind of clubs, and just thinking, how sustainable is this model that you are owned by a Hollywood actor who has no real interest in football? You're all football fans. I know, obviously, Damian, you come from rugby league as well. Is that sustainable? Is that a sustainable model where fans think, if Wrexham could do it, why can't we sell to a Hollywood star or a famous rich person in the UK?
Oliver's got very much rugby blood as well, so he understands it. It's a great question. It's actually quite a big case model on this, and I don't think anyone's really touched into it in English football at the moment. South Sydney Rabbitohs in the National Rugby League in Australia, in the top tier, were the working man's and women's, inner city Sydney club, and were on its knees. They were thrown out of the league on a criteria basis. And they had big rallies, 150,000 in the street and all this. And the saviour for them was Russell Crowe. And so, he invested money in it. But there's a lot more attraction, Hollywood attraction. Don't underestimate it. A player getting to have a one-on-one Zoom call with Ryan Reynolds, and Ryan's want to talk to him about his family and how are their family and how's his mum and dad, and we'll have a beer when I come over. Don't underestimate that attraction. It's very shallow, but there is that element where people like to be at clubs that have got this. I think Salford probably benefited from that during their rise as well. So there is that element. At the end of the day, money talks. Kevin, really,
Oh,
in a big way. But it's funny you say that, because I don't know, and I think he's forever going to be the other guy with Ryan Reynolds. So I can't remember the other guy's name either. But it's.
I've never heard of him. So fair.
I think it's an interesting one, because a big part of legislation, I find, and what Fair Game is trying to do, and I've used the example a few times, is it protects legislation and governance and rules protect clubs from each other and from themselves. That's the number one thing. When we're sitting down and we talked about all the pressures before about what goes into running a club, whether it be David, Oliver, or myself, or anyone else, or the Wrexham CEO, Fleur, right? You got pressures, and they are your captains coming in saying, I used to play with this guy, he's magnificent. If we want to get up, he should get a contract. You got your manager saying, we're halfway through the season. I know we spent our budget, but we're up there in the top 8. We really need a push now. Let's go. I need another $250,000. You're getting that pressure. And then they might even go in the paper and say, unless the chairman's ambitious, I think we're at our limit, and put this upward pressure on the poor people who are trying to balance the books and keep the club solvent. And then you've got the fans saying, well, this is our one shot in 10 years. We've got to buy a new striker. So all of those pressures are in place, and Wrexham will have those, no doubt about that. And it doesn't always work. Salford wasn't an easy ride coming up through these leagues. They spent a lot more than a lot of clubs. They had some Hollywood about them to attract players. But the amount of players on the loan list that we all would have seen and other clubs were given every month, with them having surplus players, just waste wages sitting there trying to get out. It was phenomenal. So Wrexham have to be very careful not to replicate that, because clubs with a lot of surplus aren't always happy clubs. I can guarantee you that. And you don't know if the fellow on the bench who's been paid well but not in the manager's plans might be best friends with your star player who is playing well, and it can have an effect, and it's not always the best way. So and it's not sustainable. We touched on that. It's sustainable as long as Ryan, and he shall not be named, own the place. But if they were to walk away, now they shouldn't. I mean, they're not in an industry where their revenue is going to dry up, and I'm sure they've harvested quite a bit of cash and all of that. But I don't care how wealthy you are, 2 and 3 million in cash, cold hard cash, sticking into something that you're never going to see back, is a lot of money for anyone. I don't care how wealthy you are or where your money comes from. I'm sure they have other investments. They probably have some property. They probably have a production studio. They would have other things that are on their cash flow. And once that nest egg or whatever they got in the bank, once they're no longer living off interest and that starts to come down and they have to do another film to top that up again and top that up again, it's a slippery slope. And people start to ask questions and say, do I really want to be throwing 3 million over the pond for this thing? I mean, yeah, we've changed Wrexham intrinsically and we've had a crack, but it's always, I wouldn't say it's sustainable by any stretch, Kevin, no, because it's sustainable as long as those gentlemen decide that they want to keep investing in whatever this passion is that they've picked up.
Yeah, that's really my point. I guess you've been much more eloquent about my point than I was about my own. But you're looking at when money comes in. Okay, as a fan, you think, okay, money. We've got money. This rich person's come in. They've invested in the club. Look at Cardiff. Great, this guy's come in. Fantastic. Oh, we've changed our badge and we've changed our colours to red. Okay, that's not what we wanted. Where fan ownership comes in, as my club has, that's not going to happen. We know that we're sustainable because we know the finances, and we know that the people that own our club own it for the right reasons, and they own it because we all love the club and we're all local-ish. We didn't have an external person from Malaysia or from Sacramento come in and put money in. So David, it's a difficult situation because it does not happen to you. But if somebody well-known, a famous actor comes and decide they want to buy Tonbridge. They want to buy Tonbridge Angels. They want to be the Ryan Reynolds of Tonbridge. How do you as the chairman react to that originally? Is that alarm bells, or is that, oh great, that's fantastic? Or is that immediate like, oh hang on a minute, what's happening here?
Initially it'd be alarm bells, because you've got to find out why they'd actually want to buy a team like Tonbridge Angels. However nice we are, we're not at the moment going to set the world on fire. there's a lot to be done at the ground.
Yeah.
If someone was really serious, and I've had fans say to me, well, if I win the lottery, I'll put £1 million into the club. I said, great, we'll put it into a trust fund. And so that we can either live off or gain income from it or spend it on infrastructure. I would never give a football manager £1 million in money, because the next week you come back for another million. It's managing what's the assets. I'd love to see someone come in and say, yeah, we're very happy. We want to be involved with the club, and we have sustainable growth of what we can do. And that is the way forward. It's great to have someone come in. We have had owners, but then they've walked away and they've left us in a hole. The club has gone bankrupt. The club has lost its ground. The council's 40 years ago sold our ground and refused to give us another one. And we had to go to the High Court to get a ground given to us or allocated to us, where we still are. Football has always been tenuous. It's always been a difficult situation. And I think the fair game process is the start of getting order back into what is really a chaotic industry, because that's what we are, an industry.
Yeah.
Teams that go out and spend £100 million on a player, really? Is that good? I don't know.
For me, the best thing you want in an owner, and the best owners out there, are safety nets. And if you've got someone willing and able to cover a shortfall month on month, if you have a couple of wet days, if your revenue isn't what it is, or you had an unexpected capital expense come in, they're there to cover you in that instance with a short-term director's loan or something to keep you solvent. So if you're 15K short and wages are due and all that, they can cover that. And they're that safety net. So you're still operating on a sustainable budget. You should budget at the start of the year, which should be based on revenue, income versus expenditure. And then, that can sway, as we all know, 15% either way. You don't know what sort of year you're going to have. So the nirvana for a football club is to have someone willing to cover you that potential drop or crisis time, that can keep you solvent, then you're not overspending, then you're watching every penny that you spend the right way still to hit your budget. And then you can sleep at night, David, can't you? You can then you can start to be comfortable in knowing that we're starting to build, and you can increase your budget because you can increase your revenue along with time. And I think for me, that's the ideal. You talk about the American ownerships and that there's another great study, Kevin, in Wycombe Wanderers at the moment. Now, whilst they're not Hollywood superstars, American ownership has come in there in the last couple of years, and it's a club I know well, that wore their badge of supporter ownership with great pride alongside of Wimbledon. They were one of the few clubs 100% supporter owned for a great period of time, and there's an affiliation with the two clubs for that reason. They decided they couldn't go on in that fashion, and American ownership came in, and they're well intended. Don't get me wrong, they're well intended, and they really do want football for the right reasons, and they're in love with the club and they have it for the right reasons. But that still isn't a smooth ride. And we're not talking about a Ryan Reynolds situation here that's far more sort of, a mega deal. These are good people and football people, but there's still a lot of conflict at that club in terms of that change into a foreign ownership, and not having the supporters and that altruistic supporter grassroots football mentality of a club. So it's a massive cultural character change. The pricing there in food at the moment has gone up from sort of £3.50, £4 a burger to £8.50, under American ownership in the last 6 months, which is phenomenal. Mm. And yes, they're able to message it with the fans and say, well, you want a budget, you want this and that. But at the end of the day, it's not always easy. It's a big cultural change to go from being sustainable and supporter owned to give it away to any foreign ownership, not necessarily Americans, because supporters want the investment, but they also don't want the change that comes with that, and it will be an ongoing friction over time, and it just has to be managed all the time. Yeah, and Wrexham will find that. Yeah, we'll find that.
Oliver, final word to you before we close today.
Well, oh gosh, there's so many different subjects, but just on that subject of the rich owner, as we said before we went on air, there are models of clubs where a subsidy can be sustainable. And perhaps one example is in French rugby. I think of a team, Castres, in the top 14, a small town, traditional French rugby town. They are basically bankrolled by a trust set up by a very large pharmaceuticals company. And the owner of the company set up a trust. He died, but the trust now has, I'm guessing, probably €5 million a year, which it gives on a long-term basis to the club, and it helps the club sustainably perform, probably punching above its weight in a very rich division of rugby now. So those, I think that those models, it's very easy to say, oh, you have to be making profits every year with your own resources, your own income to be sustainable, and that is kind of our model at Maidstone. But it's not the only model. I have respect for other models where either it's long term, or if there is somebody who comes in and injects money, that somehow the club has a management procedure in place for a soft landing should that disappear or reduce. And there are many cases of where clubs don't go bust when the rich owner walks away. They might have a lot of hiccups, but they don't go bust. There are very few clubs that go bust, and there are a lot of clubs that see rich owners come and go. One in Kent that I think of immediately is Margate. A few years ago, Bob Laslett turned up and for 3 years threw loads of money at Margate. They bought lots of expensive players, and then literally overnight he disappeared. And Margate is still going. They're still going strong. They've got a 3G pitch, but they had a lot of hiccups when he left. So, you know, you can survive sort of the sugar daddy owner. It doesn't necessarily deal a fatal blow to the club when they disappear. And the other thing we haven't really talked about is the idea of salary caps. Damian and I worked on a model for the National League about a year ago, which is kind of in suspended animation now. But I still believe personally that a hard salary cap is the least worst solution for helping sustainability and also helping sort of the league be equitable. Because if you have a cap that's based on revenue, you do get gross distortions in playing capacity. If you have a hard cap, for example, in the top 14 in French rugby, there is a hard cap. It's about 10 million a year. My club is the poorest in the division. We never get anywhere near that, but it puts a ceiling on the very wealthy clubs from just knocking out all the opposition and making the league completely uncompetitive every year. So I think that's a good model, and one that I hope that we'll look at again certainly at the National League level. So that's it.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really enjoyed that. I learned stuff. That's always a good sign. If you want to know more about fair game, don't forget the podcast is not called Fair Game because of Scientologists. It's fairgameuk.org. Find out more about Fair Game. Join up. Become a member of Fair Game. If you want to find out more about what Fair Game is and what the organisation is there for, that is how you find out. fairgameuk.org. So Oliver, thank you. David, thank you. Damien, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Enjoyed yourself and learned, maybe even learned something. But if you want to know more about each individual club, I'm sure you can get in touch with all of you and find out some more about what these clubs are doing and how they're surviving in a particularly difficult time for non-league football. So thank you for listening. My name is Kevin Borras, and goodbye.